me. Thanks. Cikgu John nampak dahi je Cikgu John. And then, alright, so we're still waiting for a few of us to get in. Okay, so before I formally start, just little housekeeping. If you wanna type in your message anytime, just click on the chat icon on top and just write your questions. Yeah. I haven't formally started, so we are still waiting for a few more people to get in. Okay. Just a small request from myself, if possible, we switch on our cameras so that we can see each other, but don't switch on your microphone. Keep it on mute, and at least during the introduction session, we could see each other's faces. Okay. All right. Hello, Linda. Hello, Dr. Nurul Izian. Hello. Okay. Let me just double check. Hi, Dr. Raja Elina. Hello. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Okay, just to double check if we have everyone on already. Okay, there's one more coming in. Okay. We will start in 1 minute. Hello, Dr. Zakia. It's okay, it's okay. If you can't get on the camera, it's okay. Just for the first few minutes, if we feel comfortable, we could switch on the camera so that we can see each other. And then if you want to switch it off along the way, you're welcome to. Right? So I'll start. Good morning. Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome everyone to the special webinar on online teaching and learning guideline and alternative assessment. So just a few quick housekeeping announcement. This session will be recorded by ADAC. Kindly do not click the record button. Okay, so do not click the record button. We've already clicked the record button. The recorded session will be shared with everyone after the webinar. The second point is the slides will be shared after the webinar. Please mute your microphone during the webinar. If you have any questions, unmute your mic and mute again after you're done, right? You may also post your questions in the Q&A chat box on your right screen. Hope you can see that right screen. If you think of a question for the speakers at any point at all, just type it in there and we will either post it to our speakers at that time or hold it for the Q&A slot at the end of the webinar. Right? And this is a newly published guideline. It's due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this guideline and special webinar are brought to you by ADAC with support of Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and International Office, and also the Quality Management and Enhancement Center, QMAC, our Academic Strategic Planning Center, ASPC, our Academician Administration and Services Center, AASC, and also Center for Internship Training and Academic, CITRA. This is a joint collaboration. At any point, if during the Q&A session, we have representative from QME, ASPC, AASC or CITRA, we hope if there's any for today's session, we can also put the questions to them or they can also help answer any of the questions you have, right? So I'll start sharing my screen now. may I request that you shout out if the screen is
Yes, we can see your screen, everything on your screen.
Can you see our slide right now?
Yeah, we can see your slide. Yeah, it's in PowerPoint form, not yet
So if
in
I
presentation.
play it out now, let me run it. Is that okay? Am I showing the slide in full screen? Not yet?
Okay, we can see your slide on the full screen, Dr. Azah.
You can see the slide on the full screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I'll start now.
Okay.
So we're from ADAC, and this is our online teaching and learning and alternative assessment guideline. Thank you, Dr. Amira. We
Welcome.
Thank you. So this is our last day of our 5 days webinar series. So the first day was with Dr. Faradina Yusof, and the second day we had Dr. Zahiruddin Fitri, and then on the third day, Wednesday, we had Dr. Amira. Yesterday we had Dr. Safia, and today, lucky last, my turn. We are sharing the same information and the same slides of our newly published online teaching and learning and alternative assessment guideline. So from today onwards, what's next is for you staffs to have e-learning clinic chances to enroll in our e-learning clinic. So if you have any hands-on online teaching requirements that you would like to know more about, we will have Dr. Muhammad Yazid Ahmad on the 9th of October, and we will have Dr. Donnie Adams on the 23rd of October and Dr. Zahiruddin Fitri himself on the 30th of October. So this today's special webinar, this 1 week special webinar, is to brief on the guideline, the overall big picture, and for the hands-on bit, the e-learning clinic, we will continue with that the week after. So I'll proceed. At the end of the session or any time during the webinar, if we can have your feedback, it'd be really great. We have the link down here, and we would really like to get your feedback. You can key in multiple times if you have different questions at different times of um, the if it pops up to your mind, the feedback form. So we are more than happy to receive your feedback about the special webinar. Right? Okay, so this is the online teaching and learning guideline that we have mentioned. It was released first time on the 28th of September 2020, and that's the link that you could download it from. It is on our ADAC website, and it's accessible to you even right now on our ADAC website. It's in PDF form. So this teaching and learning guideline, University of Malaya, online teaching and learning guideline by University of Malaya, it covers three scopes or three parts of the online teaching and learning, which is the first one is the design, second part is the delivery, and the last part is the assessment. Okay, so the three aspects, like we mentioned earlier, design, delivery, and assessment. When we say about design, it's about the constructive alignment. It's about the student learning time or SLT, and course workload consideration is also put in the design stage or aspects. And then in terms of delivery, we have the synchronous and asynchronous mode of teaching. We also have the social teaching and cognitive presence. So in terms of delivery, these are the two subtopics. And in terms of assessment, we will cover formative, summative, and alternative assessment. So we'll get through that throughout this webinar today. Okay, so let's start with the design bit. The first bit of the design we mentioned was the constructive alignment. So this means that when we are preparing or we are planning at the planning stage of the our online teaching and learning, similar to what we are doing face to face, it's the constructive alignment, which means we must ensure that the intended learning outcomes are clear and the learning activities that we plan, such as the computer-based simulation or your group work or your assignments or what you do in class, will correlate with the intended learning outcome, and also your assessment and feedback is also correlated to the intended learning outcome. So all three must be interrelated to each other. This is what we meant by constructive alignment. So it starts with the CLO, program learning outcomes, boils down to the individual CLO of the class. So it depends on your course. Sometimes you have more than one or less than five. So in my faculty, it's usually about 3. So CLO1 is very specific to what the students are meant to achieve or meant to be able to do, okay, at the end of the course. So in this example, we say CLO1 is to apply theory of air traffic management to develop solutions for practical ATM problems. So this means at the end of the course, we must ensure that the students are able to apply the theory of air traffic management in order to develop solutions for practical ATM problems. With that in mind, we design our learning activities for the students to be able to try out and apply this CLO. And when we also plan the assessment and the feedback, we will assess them and we give them feedback about what they are able to do based on the CLO1. So this is what we meant by constructive alignment. All three components relate to each other. So we don't ask something that is not mapped to the CLO, or when we do our learning activities, we don't do things that are not related to the CLO. So that's what we mean by constructive alignment. So in terms of assessment and feedback, this is where your percentages of weightage comes in, and assessment and feedback, we will cover that towards the end of the webinar. All right. So this is where Borang Tiga, we call it, BR003. I'm sure each and every one of us have seen this and have at least a copy of this for your course in your laptop or in your desktop or in your saved drives anywhere right now. So this is what we meant by CLO. So you have the course, your name there, your title of the course, and what is the CLO, the things that you want the student to be able to achieve at the end of the course. So in this case, to discuss the roots of global environmental crisis from several different perspectives. That's the one. And then you map that to the PLO, and this is where we mentioned about strategy pembelajaran or the learning strategy, the constructive alignment component number 2, and also the kaedah penilaian or assessment method. So you can spell it out, either continuous assessment, how much percentage it will be, final exam, how much percentage it will be. So these are the 3 components of the constructive alignment that we mentioned just now. So this form, I'm sure each and every one of us has at least played with it at least once. In Spectrum, Spectrum is our official learning platform. So in Spectrum, this is where we can see if you open your Spectrum, you can see on the right hand side of your screen, you'll see this bit, course status blended, and you have the resources, the activities, and assessment. Also reflects, these 3 items also reflect your constructive alignment. So your resources is your usually people will put up your lecture notes or your online teaching videos or your link to an article or your textbook discussion and things like that. So that's resources. So this is the one that you consider about the topic. And then the learning activities, the second part of the constructive alignment, the learning activities, and also the assessment bit. So if you realize, even in spectrum, we have emphasized on the constructive alignment, the material or the subject matter itself, what are the learning activities, and also the assessment. So this is the minimum requirement for your course to be blended, to be green. If it's not blended, it means item, either resources is not enough 8, or your activities not enough by 3, or there's not enough assessment and the minimum requirements 2. So my advice as a friend to you, as a fellow colleague, is from the beginning of the semester, you check this bit in your blended status of your spectrum and just ensure that you have 8 resources at least, 3 activities at least, and 2 assessment at least already in the spectrum, even though you haven't used it yet. Yeah, so in order for you to do that, you will, if you need more guidance on that, that's where you need the e-learning clinic by Dr. Yazid, Dr. Dani Adams, and Dr. Zahiruddin Fitri. Okay, so this is very important because this one, it will appear in your, I think it appears in your KPI whether your course is blended or not, because this is what being observed by the university at the university level. So again, my advice, just make sure before the students even come in, before anything happens, before the semester starts, just try to make sure that you have 8 resources uploaded, 3 activities prepared, and 2 assessments prepared. Whether or not they are doing it there and then, or you will use it later, that's a second matter, right? So my advice is just to get it on there, so just to make sure that your course is blended. All right, let's talk about SLT, student learning time. This is what we may need to know a little bit more during the COVID pandemic. Things change a little bit, or may I say a little bit more than what we expected. Okay, so high percentage of SLT shall be allocated for self-learning, because now we know that they have to learn by themselves online at their own homes or their colleges. They're not coming to physical classrooms anymore. So when we do this online, so we are talking about Borang 4, BR004 form right now. I'm sure you've also seen that form, at least during this semester break, where you have to fill up a high percentage of SLT for self-learning. I mean, more than before. Extra time should be designated for non-face-to-face activities to ensure the CLOs are achieved. And then all changes to the SLT must be reflected in the updated student learning time form. This is what I mentioned, BR004 form. So this is to assist in ensuring that at least 70 or 80% of the planned activities have been conducted. Right? This was adopted. This is an excerpt from our online teaching and learning guideline, and you could see the link there if you want to download it. Right. So from your guideline, we have also presented this Appendix 1, Guideline for Estimation of the SLT. For example, before this, we had let's say a 2 credit hour course. We can make it 2 credit hour face-to-face lecture, if you remember. Okay. However, if we are to do live interaction with the students using Zoom or Google Meet, okay, so live interaction with the student, if it's face-to-face 1 hour, the student preparation time we multiply by 1 or 2. Okay. This is to address the learning time that they do by themselves. Okay, if there's a learning example, these are just examples. If you have a collaborative learning activity, for example, group work and discussion among groups, so you provide the topic and you let them do themselves. Okay, so these are non face-to-face, 1 hour, and you multiply by 1 to 2. And as a simple guideline, 180 words per minute assumption of student that the student made, that students read all of their peers' postings for the duration of this lesson. So that's a rough estimation. Okay. If you are putting up material, let's say you pre-record your own lecture and you put it up on Spectrum or YouTube or Facebook Live or anywhere you want to put it up, and you expect the student to view the on-screen material by themselves, or you may even just put your PowerPoint slides. Okay, so these are also considered non-face-to-face, and each screen we roughly estimate about 5 minutes on average. So about 18 slides is roughly 1.5 hours. So when we do the student preparation time, we multiply by 1 or 2 times viewing hours. Okay, so there are many other guidelines that we have proposed here. Media-based activity, similar, 1 to 2 times viewing hours. Text content, if you put an article, you put in instructional activities. So basically the student preparation time will be a multiple of 1 or 2. You can see here on the right hand side of the table, presentation session or online quiz and test. These are non face to face. It may take, for the student activity itself to occur, it may take just half an hour or 1 hour. But for a half an hour session of the online quiz, let's say you set the quiz to be 30 minutes quiz. When we do the preparation time, student preparation time, we have to be aware that this must be multiplied by 3 to 4 hours. Like for example, a 1 hour quiz or test is preparation time is about 3 to 4 hours. Presentation session of half an hour multiplied by 3 to 4 hours. Okay, so these are rough estimation. You can use your own judgment based on the intricacy of your questions, the assignments. If it's quite straightforward or if it's complex, very complex, you may use your own judgment to increase or decrease the number of the student preparation time. Written assignment, 10 to 12 hours preparation time for them to write 2,000 words and then upload it on Spectrum or email or anything. Okay, so case summary, creative writing, and reflective portfolio entry. So these are all the recommended SLT that we may not have thought about very much before the pandemic happened, but right now we may need to consider it a little bit more. Okay, let me stop for a while and address some of your questions. Dr. Faiza binti Kasim, can I get the slides later? Yes, you can get the slides later after the webinar is ended. Dr. Felicita, quick question on the student preparation time for the non-face-to-face teaching activities and assignment. Yes. Dr. Azah mentioned we can change it as is based on the needs of. Yes. These are estimation. These are guidelines. So the idea here is the more thinking the student require, the range to work with. Look at my screen. Student preparation time 1 to 2 hours for live interaction, multiple of 1 to 2. 1 to 2. If it is a case, for example, case summary, 3 hours per case. Or in terms of creative writing, can you see my screen, Dr. Felisa? So it must be within this range. This is the recommended range, yes.
See, sorry, I can't see your screen. I was just wondering whether we are allowed to go ±1 outside that range. If it was like, if I want to multiply it by 3, for example, for the online quiz test. Oh, sorry, like 2 or 5, or am I allowed to get out of that range? But it's strictly within the range.
My advice is to stick within the range, but if you strongly feel that your assignment may require more than that. This will be applicable more to the case summaries, creative writing, or portfolio entry and things like this, where your question may be have a different level of um, complexity compared to the average one. Then you may want to add it a little bit more. Then you are allowed, because this is where we. But when we talk about live interaction, for example, lectures, so we don't. I personally, I don't think you will need more time in terms of the multiple. So is that, am I addressing your question? So when it
Yes,
comes to
yes, you
group
are.
activities, yes, when it comes to group activities that has a range of complexity or what's expected from them, then you may have a good justification to increase the student learning time or student preparation time. Then yes, the answer is
Okay,
yes.
sorry, just last one to just summarize what you just said. So it's depending on the activity, but not necessarily the cost. Like, for example, we're from the medical faculty, so
Yeah.
even if I feel that the cost might be a bit heavier in terms of knowledge and things like that, but as long as it's an online quiz of about an hour, we are hoping that the student prep time stays within that 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
But when a tweak, it would be more like things that are case summaries or creative writing, or am
Yes.
I
Yes.
correct?
The more subjective ones, you have more room to justify that your case is harder, or in your case your assignments require more than just 3 hours preparation time, so you are
Oh,
able to justify that. But in terms of
okay.
uploading or view students to view your on-screen material, it pretty much is the same, pretty much I might say. But yeah, so this is the beauty of online teaching and learning guideline, because it's the first time, my personal opinion, my personal take is the first time we're doing it. There's a guideline. Even the name is a guideline. It's not a strict enforcement. So we are giving you a guideline, but it's up to your discretion to adjust accordingly, according to your own course and your topic. Is that okay, Dr.
Okay.
Lisa? Thank
Great.
you so
Thank you
much
so
for your
much, Dr.
question.
Azah.
Thank you so much for your question. Okay, Dr. Jong asked question number 1, the 2,000 words in research. Is it a must? No, 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 it's not a must. This is a guideline, examples. So we are putting the 2,000 words estimation in order for us to estimate the 10 to 12 hours. So for example, 120 minutes granted for preparation time, 20 words written per minute. So these are, if you really don't know what number to put, you follow this. But if you can justify, or you have an idea, okay, I think this will be more or less time required, then by all means, because this is a guideline, it's meant to guide, not to dictate. Okay, Dr. Jong? Okay, Dr. Ong Sim Ying asked a question. Do we have a guideline on how SLT proportions to the assessment marks? Say components that need more SLT will carry more marks. No, no, no. Components that need more SLT will carry. No, no. I've never come across that rule. Dr. Ong, I think my answer is no. Components requiring more SLT will carry more marks. Not necessarily. Okay, Dr. Ong, did I answer your question? Dr. Hamid Reza, salam Dr. Azah, Waalaikumsalam. For lab course that plan to be virtually conducted and we may have to teach the students the new software platform, can we apply the same weightage coefficient for SLT? Yes, in this case you can use your own judgment. If you think that the students are learning the new software or the new platform for the very first time and they may require more time in terms of preparation, yes, you can apply the same weightage or coefficient. So you can adjust it. It's a guideline, right? And but you can somehow feel the rough rule of thumb here, that if it's a passive work, for example watching something or viewing something or typing in discussion or the collaborative, the preparation time is less. But you can see if it's a more active activity, like written assignments, case summaries, or they have to do a bit of research, they have to learn a new platform, then you may put in the student preparation time a bit more. So it's you would know your course best, and you would be the best person to. But just don't go too far off that you would still try to contain the whole learning activity to be not too much, not too heavy. What I mean here is, if it's a 2 credit hour course, when you do this SLT, when you compile everything and you have the last number, try to ensure that the activity that you provide, if you think it's very complex and it has a lot of student preparation time required, then you may need to judge again. Oh, mine is a 2 credit hour course, this is like a 4 credit hour course, so you may want to tone down. So it's in a way, it's a way for us lecturers to also double check the assignment that we give to them. Is it okay? Is it at the level, So that's why it's important to do this before the students come in, and the assignments that you want to give, the topics that you want to assign to them to research on, and your judgment of their ability, and those will come into picture here. Okay, shall I move on to the next topic? Okay, bigger picture, course workload. We talked about a particular course just now. So when we talk about a particular course, you're only looking at your course and the SLT of your course and the constructive alignment within that actual course. But when it comes to the student, you may have missed what other colleague have put in for their students. So in, at least in my department, I'm quite happy to share that our course coordinator and our head of department made everyone to sit down together and key in, when do you plan to do your quiz 1, when do you plan to do your assessment number 2, your mid-semester exam, or so you put it all in one, and the course coordinator will compile everything and share with everyone that, okay, if it's a second year student, this will be how this is how their timetable look like. And you can see on Monday they have 3 courses, on Tuesday they have 4 courses, and week by week which lecturer assigns which assignment or which assessment, some of the quiz or mid-semester exam or final exam. Final exam, we cannot say anything because it's towards the end of the semester, but within the week 1 to week 13, that's where you try to give out the assessments, the mini assessments. So these are the things that we would, it'd be nice if we could look at it as a bigger picture, as a department, as at the program level. So for each student, how many courses did she enroll in? How many credits did they take? What's the busiest day of their week? What time their class ends? When will she or he start working on her assignments? Will she have more time to do readings before class? These are all considerations in terms of course workload as a whole, as a student. So that is why during this online teaching and learning, because there's a lot of student learning time that is independent, that is outside of what we usually do, so they are at home, we have to be more considerate and plan a little bit better with our fellow colleagues in terms of the assignments that we give. So you could see, if you are in their shoe, would you be happy to receive 3 assignments, huge assignments, with a very short deadline from 3 different courses? You wouldn't. So that is why it's important for us lecturers, academics, to talk to our friends who are teaching the same, or maybe it's a role of the course coordinator or the head of department, or if you're proactive enough, you yourself just double check with your other colleagues. These are the courses taken by 3rd year students, for example. I'm offering my assignment at this time, and this quiz or test. Will it be too much if I offer it this time? Will it clash with yours? Are you expecting to, Students are usually smart. they will tell us. Even before the pandemic happens, they will tell me, doctor, the other course is already we have midterm on that day or that date. So that's why even before the online teaching and learning happens, I myself would set a date of the midterm exam, the quiz test, and all the other things early in the semester so that they can lock it in their calendars themselves, and they themselves can double check and let the other lecturers know who set the dates later than me. They will be able to adjust. So students, they are really great survivors of the system. So um, you can work with them also, but when it comes to them already, it's like we will seem a little bit unprepared. So to be one step ahead of them, we prepare everything first, and then when we throw it to them, let it be just the small feedback that we could manage to handle. So that's about the course workload and the planning. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Ong Sim Ying, thank you. In FSKTM, we have Google Sheets to put all our assessment deadlines for every course. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. So course workload, please ensure that the number and complexity of tasks given commensurate with the course credit load and student learning time. So this is what I meant just now. When you are preparing for the student learning time and you think, oh, this assignment needs 20 hours, and then it may, yes, you have the flexibility to adjust that, but it will mean you have to lessen the other components in the same course so that the total student learning time still reflects the credit hours that the students take. Is that okay? So this is good for you to ensure that the whole thing is balanced out at the end of the day. Right? So are we okay with planning or the design bit? Can we move on to delivery now? Okay. In terms of delivery, there are two modes, synchronous and asynchronous. This is one of the very first posters that ADAC produced and put it up on Info. I think during the first, not even the first month, this first couple of weeks within the pandemic, when the pandemic happened. This was the first education to lecturers about online teaching and learning. The fact that it can be synchronous or asynchronous. All this while we are using Spectrum and we have different preferences. Oh, I like to do it on the time itself, or some other people, they just put up all the slides during the first beginning of the semester, and then when the time comes they just do discussion. So there are many ways to do this, so there's no right or wrong or one better than the other. It's very contextualized. So synchronous is real time during a particular time where everyone gets together at that time and the learning happens at that time itself. Our recommendation from the guideline, so this is a recommendation, yeah, it's a guideline, yeah. Minimum 3 per semester. Minimum 3. But of course, if you could do more, it's better. But we put in the minimum 3 is because at the beginning, when you want to touch base with your students, because we know they may be in their hometowns with very limited access of internet, and they may need to purchase the online, the fact that they have to do online, they have to purchase their credit or whatever. So at least in the beginning of the semester, we do a touch base. So you're clear and you can see who your students are and they can see you, and you can be very verbal about what you expect from the course, from them, and about so this is where you tell them about the course learning outcome at the beginning of the course. Usually we explain the whole big picture of the course. So that's where I think we should do it synchronously. And then in the middle, so that you know that they are still with you, this is where you want to double check the feedback. Maybe towards the middle of the semester is where you transition from the basic understanding towards the more advanced understanding, so that is a pivot point that you want to address, maybe, or you just want to have it somewhere in the middle, so that you pick a very important topic, or you want to explain a particular assignment to them. And then before the end of the semester, another synchronous one, so that you can see that you can touch base with them again, that they are prepared for the final assessment, that no one is left behind in terms of course lecture notes or anything else. Okay, so that they can also meet their friends, all 70 or hundreds of them, because maybe you give them assignment in groups, so but they are only working with 5 or 4 of them in a group. But when we do synchronous classes, that's where you can let them see everyone from Johor, from Sarawak, from Perlis, everyone there in the screen, all hundreds of them or 30 of them, or however much your class number is. So this is where you give the beauty or the value of synchronous teaching. So that's why we from EDAC and our collaborators, we recommend minimum of 3 per semester at least. You can have more if you think your students can do it, can cope, and you can afford it, then you do more. If you can even do every semester, it's even every semester plus every classes every week synchronous, it's even better. Okay, but if there are constraints, really hard constraints, then minimum 3 per semester, beginning, middle, and before the end of the semester. You can also do live classes or even guest lectures at the synchronous times. So if you want to do more than the 3, the 5th one or the 7th one or the 10th one, you can, it's not just, you can make it not just about you teaching them, or you can make it as a group discussion point. Let's say you have an asynchronous activity before that, and the synchronous time is when you discuss or you deliberate or you talk about the discussion or the findings that they got from the asynchronous session that you had. So your synchronous session number 5, for example, is a guest lecture. You have so just so that you make it interesting, yeah. You get someone from the industry to take part in the discussion about that particular CLO that you had talk about. So these are ideas that I'm throwing in on how do you blend in the synchronous and the asynchronous sessions. Okay, so some notes about synchronous teaching or delivery. There's no maximum. Lecturers are advised to consider all factors, including the suitability and the nature of the course, the needs of the students' access to the sessions, and etc. Okay. In terms of asynchronous, it means it's not in real time. This is more suitable for a greater or a more general population of students. So not all of them will have time at Tuesday 2 to 5. They may not have that luxury of time in their context. So asynchronous, we do it more each week. Learning materials or one learning activity or one learning assessment. So by understanding this and looking back or reflecting back on our spectrum blended learning, you can easily satisfy this asynchronous bit by your assessment, your 2 assessments and your 3 activities, if I'm mistaken. Yeah. Okay. This is when you do a pre-recorded lecture, or you don't have to make a 3, if it's a 3 credit hour course, you don't have to make a 3 hours pre-recorded lecture. Yeah, don't. I don't think they will watch straight 3 hours unless you like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie watch. Even a 3-hour movie is hard to follow. So go straight to the point. make it interesting, make it very sharp what the point is. You have to be a little bit creative on how you want to deliver the subject material that you want them to understand, and keep it as nice and concise as possible for the pre-recorded lecture. That's my personal advice. Okay. I would not recommend that you go through your slide like a lecture session where you read and you read and you read the slide next one by one, because they can do that themselves. Unless you want to pinpoint a particular part of your slide, then you want to add in some illustration, or you want to add in some examples from the video. Okay, so if it's a link to a YouTube video clip, for example, just give them the link that they could watch it themselves. You don't have to put in the video, the YouTube video itself. So you could put in your a slide snapshot or the clip where it's really making your point, but you don't have to record on top of a record. You know what I mean? And then you can also try screencasting, slide casting on narrated slides, or you can do a MOOC. So it's up to you. This is where the asynchronous delivery is concerned. All right. So I hope we have a clear differentiation of synchronous and asynchronous delivery technique. Are we okay with delivery for now before we move on to assessment? Let me allow 1 minute for you to ask question on the chat box, and we continue after 1 minute if there's any question. Is that okay? So 1 minute from now, yeah? Okay, 1 minute's up. Okay, thank you, Dr. Jun. So far so good katanya. Thank you. Dr. Raja Elina, Dr. Azah, just to double confirm, small group tutorial session facilitated by a number of lecturers at one time is considered synchronous session, right? Yes. Yes. So if the lecturer or your facilitator is is online together with the student, yes, it's synchronous. It's considered synchronous. So it's not about the number of students in the session. It's about whether they are online the same time or they are not online the same time. If, Dr. Rajalina, if the discussion is done asynchronously, meaning there is a facilitator, there is a group tutorial that is done by posting online on a chat or on a WhatsApp session, for example, that is a very long duration, for example, 3-day thing, and they could put in things and then leave and someone check and give feedback. that's a gray area between synchronous and asynchronous, because you're not getting real time as in real time. So that's a little bit of a gray area. But if it's a synchronous, it means everyone is, if the everyone is 5%, then that 5%, including the lecturer or the facilitator, is a synchronous session. Yes, we can get. Okay, thank you. You can get the slide for you to recall at the end of the session. No worries, we will provide you that. So whoever participated in today's webinar will receive the slides at the end of the session. Okay? Okay, so no more other questions. Let me proceed to the assessment bit. Okay, this part is a little bit less familiar to more people. The preparation part, you do it whether or not it's online, whether or not there's COVID. The delivery part, there's a slight taking adjustment needed in terms of the synchronous and the asynchronous, but some of us are already doing the synchronous versus the asynchronous even before the pandemic. But this bit, the assessment, let's look at this. Okay, so let's look at why we conduct assessment. For us, mostly for us, okay, if you ask a very young, new academic member who may not understand the spirit of teaching and learning so much yet, the assessment is for you to get marks and evaluate the students and put in the file cursus so that you can determine whether they get an A or an A minus or B, a B plus or B minus or C or fail. That's basically it. For someone that's new, okay, even when I started teaching, that was what I thought assessment is all about. It's for me to label or to segregate the students, not segregate as in, but to classify. Okay, these are the A student, the B student, and it's for me to know who the good ones and the bad ones are. But as I grow wiser and older, okay, it's actually to reflect on and improve on my own teaching. Why did this group of students, this cohort, there's a lot of them getting all A's? Is it me who's doing it so easy? Or is it really that I'm a good teacher? Okay, or if there's a group of students who always on the borderline, is it something on my method of teaching that is not suitable for a certain type of students who may not be able to think the way I deliver? Okay, so it's not very much, as I go wiser, it's not so much on how the assessment to reflect on how they perform, but it's actually to reflect on how I perform as a teacher. Am I able to make all of my students understand? How many percent of the students got through what I'm trying to explain? So before, if I get some number of students who fail, or the younger me will say, it's okay because they are not good student, memanglah dia fail je selalu, But the wiser and older me will say, there must be something that I did wrong that even for them, they are not getting it. Okay, so I'm talking about the second point here, for teachers to reflect on and improve their teaching practices. Okay, for the students is to know how well they are doing in their learning process. This is another point that I would like to emphasize. I know I've been in this business for quite a while, and I know some lecturers or academicians, they don't like to give the students the carry mark, or if they give assignment in week 3, you have 10 weeks for you to provide them what they did well or wrong. They don't. If you give assignment at week 3, quiz at week 5, mid-semester exam at week 8, quiz 2 at week 10, for example, students are in the dark all the time. And it's just teach, give assessment, move on to the next topic, give assessment, move on to the next topic, give assessment. At the end of the day of the semester, it's a final exam. Okay, it's like a drama. And then 2-3 weeks after the final exam, surprise, you get an A, or surprise, you get a B plus, you know. So for the students, there's no learning that happened. There's no feedback for them. So assessment is meant for them to be able to improve their grades, because students, they are thinking about grades, not so much understanding, let's be honest. And for them to understand where they are lacking of understanding in particular topic, what they should do, especially when the topic is a very basic topic. If you don't provide them the feedback of the basics of it, they may not be able to proceed to the next level of topics where it requires the understanding of the first basic topics. So that's where for the students is to do assessment is very important for you to for them to know how well they are doing in their learning process. So it's very crucial, I must say it's very important, if you provide an assessment, for you to provide back give them the feedback of the assessment as soon as you can. I know we are all busy, we don't do only classes, we have our research, our labs, our other things to do, our administration. But wherever you can or however you can, you would want the students to get feedback about how they perform on that test or that assessment as soon as possible. Okay, so we'll address how to do that in a short while. And for the department, the last point here, why conduct assessment is for the department to refine the current curriculum and for curriculum review. This is where the more formal one will take part, the bigger picture and the cohort and the arrangement. So this bit is less of our control because it's a bigger task. The one that we can control is the students and the teachers bit. Okay. So there are 3 types of assessment. Okay. Okay, Cikgu John, I'll address your question at the end of it, okay? Okay, there are 3 types of assessment. There's formative assessment, there's summative assessment, and there's alternative assessment. Okay, let's go through it. Formative versus summative. Okay, these two are compare side. You can compare this side by side. Formative is more to inform you. Formative is more along the way. It occurs before or during the instruction. However, the summative assessment, it occurs after the instruction. It's more of a judgment way. So formative assessment, it is the assessment for learning. Meaning, when you give the assessment, it's for them to learn through the assessment. Because students learn not just by listening to you. Students learn by doing. And what they do is the assessment. Okay, so that's the assessment for learning. Some of us, we like to give quiz every week, for example, because we believe that students learn when there's quiz. Through the quiz, they learn through doing the quiz, or they learn through doing the assignment. So some of us, we don't do quiz every week, we give assignment every week. So there are like 5 questions every week. They have to solve these 5 questions. Maybe calculation, maybe a short description or something like that. So those are meant for learning. It's not to judge their learning, but it's to help them learn. However, on the other side of the coin, the summative assessment is the assessment of what they have learned, the assessment of learning. Meaning, the assessment of learning means when you have done everything that you could in order to make them understand, and that's the final one for you to have an estimation of what level they are in terms of understanding. So you've done all you can in terms of the instruction, in terms of the formative assessment falls within that instruction. So you've done all your formative assessment. Last, you do the summative assessment. So that's the assessment of learning, and usually this summative assessment is your final exam, your mid-semester exam, or in some people, they consider the quizzes. Maybe they have only 2 quiz per semester. So they have final exam, mid-semester exam, and 2 quiz. Those are your assessment of learning. So maybe quiz 1 address CLO number 1, quiz 2 address CLO number 2 or CLO number 3, and things like that. So you have done all your instruction beforehand and then you assess them. So that's a summative assessment. Formative assessment, in terms of feedback, you give a descriptive feedback, not for example, you give a more general written type. Okay, I think your understanding is a little bit off here. It's more, I think, okay, you describe the feedback, or you can provide feedback in terms of, okay, there are 5 questions per week for you to do, as in the formative assessment. Formative, you give 5 questions per week for them to practice in terms of the assignment. And you don't mark everything individually. You provide the answer scheme, or the answer jalan kerja, or your answers. After they've submitted, you provide it to them, and then they'll check themselves, or they do peer feedback, or they do peer checking. So the workload here is not so much on you, because you can give, I see a Kahoot. Okay, Kahoot quizzes at the end of the lecture. Yes, that's you can consider that as a formative assessment, because you don't really take their marks for that, because they are learning. They are allowed to make mistakes during the formative assessment session, because if you don't allow them to make mistake, they don't want to do, and then they're not learning, because they feel very guarded, they feel very defensive about it. So you allow them. So a Kahoot, the online quizzes you do in class, those are good ones. The ones that you could playfully or gamify it, so while they are learning, the assessment is taking place at the same time they are learning. So you don't really take their marks seriously there, because they're still learning. It's okay. So examples are quizzes, like I mentioned, observations, exit tickets, writings, essay, drawing. So maybe they put them in groups, and then 4 of them come up with a particular drawing or infographics way, and then they present to their teams, or they post it somewhere, and then on Spectrum, they post it on Spectrum, and then their friends comment on it. So it's assessment, but it's for learning, it's not of their learning. So you could give marks for submission, you could give marks for simple ones, not too heavy weightage if you want to address that. Okay, or if you want to do a summative one, this is more formal. You have the end of semester exam, the end of topic, or you have the national or international exams. So I hope we are clear about the difference between summative and formative assessment. I welcome any question at this point. Banyak dah soalan ni. Okay, Cikgu Jun, question number 3, for assignment research in Malaysia now, as per education blueprint, we have to emphasize on the HOTS aspect. How do you assess it to decide the A or B or C research ranking? I don't understand. How do you assess it to decide the A or B or C research ranking? I don't understand that, Cikgu Jun. I'll move on. Can I get some examples of exit ticket? I'm not too sure. Maybe social sciences can answer. Anyone? Dr. Amira ke? Can I get some examples of exit tickets? Or my rough understanding is they write down what they understand about the topic before they leave the class. So is that, Dr. Amira, do you want to help with this exit ticket thing?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Dr. Azah. I've actually posted some links to some sample exit tickets from the internet, so you can check it out.
Okay.
Basically, what I understand is that the exit tickets. Sorry if I'm echoing. Basically, the exit ticket is just to get, like Dr. Azah said, students' understanding and also students how they feel about how the class is going. Do they feel that they are able to grasp it? Things like that. It's very sort of like very much assessment for learning, very much formative assessment. Okay, thanks, Dr. Azah. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Amira. Yes. So my thinking, because I don't use the term exit ticket, but I do this when I ask the student, okay, before you leave the class, can you write down what you understand about this topic today? Okay, and then just pass it down to me. Those are the days when you use pen and paper, or they can put it up on Spectrum or anywhere else. But the fact that you can have pen and paper is really nice, even with online classes. But yeah, you can't. So yes, basically it's a very subjective way of doing feedback for you to judge their understanding of the topic, or to get feedback about how you do as a teacher, how effective you are in terms of the class itself. Some in some instances I do Google form, so I get at the end of the class, I get them to fill up a 3-question. So I designed the question. 2 question is about the class itself, the topic itself, and the other question was, did you enjoy the class? Or it can sound like how would you like me to do better next time, something like that, about so it's very confined about that topic itself. Let's say for that class I brought in Play-Doh, and I teach them about forces and pressure and internal pressure and things like that. And you can see if you use a different material to indent it, you get different indentation pattern or something like that. So some takes it quite well, some say I only, you get feedback, real feedback from them when you do it right after class, before they leave the class and things like that. So those are exit tickets, and it's more assessment for learning and more for you to know how you're doing and how how successful you have been in delivering that particular topic that's been discussed at that time. Right? Any more question? What category does continuous assessment fall under? Okay, in UM, Dr. Shani and Mani, in UM, we classify continuous versus apa lagi satu tu? Final, kan? So it's just a differentiation between final and non-final exam. So continuous assessment and final exam, kan? So final exam is the end of semester exam, the one that during the non-COVID times they do it on Dewan Peperiksaan. But anything other than that, we call it continuous assessment. So continuous assessment in this case is either formative or summative. If you get marks from it, if you use the formative assessment to get some marks from it, it will be under continuous assessment. If you use summative assessment, for example, your quizzes, your end of topic tests, your mid-semester exam, those you get marks for it, those are directly go to continuous assessment, because your non-continuous assessment is just the final exam. Is that okay? To clarify, how do you mark the assignment? Oh, Dr. Safia pun dah tolong jawabkan. Thank you, Dr. Safia. How do you mark the assignment to find out the hot aspect? Oh, okay. Okay, so Cikgu John, you're referring to the question you had in the beginning. Yeah, the one that I didn't understand. Okay. How do you mark the assignment to find out the hot assignment? This is where when you design the question and you have room to allow them to discuss more than one options of answer. For example, the answer may not be a single answer, so then they have the consideration of different other factors when they put the answers in. They have, if we think about it this way, this is the answer. If we think about it this way, if you put different materials or if you put different factors, this will be the answer. So when you have non-straightforward answer, that's already HOTS. But the level of HOTS, I think that's a topic that will be discussed best with Prof. Aziz, under ADEC also. We will be having Prof. Aziz on the 15th of October on the topic of designing complex problems for examination. So I welcome you to join that session on the 15, 15 hari bulan 10, 15th of October by Professor Abdul Aziz Rahman, who's our Deputy Vice Chancellor HEPA and Pembangunan. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nurliana. You have another meeting to attend. Sure. Thank you for joining us. We have okay. So not really questions, but opinions. Very good. Okay, we can check the opinions on the chat room, yeah? Okay, let's move on. Feedback in teaching and learning. Okay, how well they are doing on what they have done, that's summative. And how can they improve while studying, that's formative feedback. So this is the difference between summative and formative. In summative feedback, students will not be able to use the feedback to improve their works. But in formative feedback, they will be able to. Okay. So, okay, this is a new topic. Some of you may be more familiar with it than others. So, alternative assessment. It's also called authentic assessment and comprehensive assessment. Okay. We have also published, ADEC has also published this authentic or alternative assessment quick guide. Okay, redesigning assessment for holistic. It is available on edX's website. We call it redesigning assessment for holistic learning. So let me just try to explain to you in simple terms what this is. For example, you have your CLO is communication. Okay, so there are many types of communication. So whether your assessment method addresses what they really want, what you really want them to perform. So for example, you have communication, and your assessment method must reflect the actual communication, as in they are presenting in front of you, they are talking to you, they are delivering their idea effectively with the good body language, the good delivery aids or teaching aids or presentation aids, for example, slides. Those is what we mean by alternative assessment or authentic assessment. It means you don't use pen and paper anymore for everything. We have been doing assessment that may not reflect what we want the students to do. For example, okay, another simple example. You have the PO ethics. PO berapa ya? PO, can't remember what number the PO is. But we have ethics in our PLO. And that ethics is, the CLO is under one course, and that course says student has to be able to discuss ethics, consideration, Okay, how authentic is that assessment? By right, if you want to produce a student that is ethical, you should look at the actual performance in terms of them behaving ethically But if you ask them, but because it is so hard to do, it is so hard for you to monitor each and every student's behavior in terms of ethical, you have to somehow trick them into thinking that no one is looking. Then they do ethical, they perform ethically, right? It's quite a tricky PLO to address. But what we've been doing is to have a question. Okay, what are the ethical conduct that you should do? So student pun jawab in the paper beautifully, excellently, 100 marks. But it is not authentic because do they practice what they write down? When they answer the question, they may get 100% when they answer that ethics question. But out there, do they behave the same way? So that's what we mean by alternative assessment or authentic assessment or comprehensive. You actually assess the student's ability and proficiency in performing that task that are related to the intended learning outcome. Some are easier than others to do. For example, problem solving. So you pose a problem and they do the calculation and they could solve the problem. Okay, it's quite straightforward. Or knowledge, the PLO on knowledge. To know the different types of, I don't know, whatever, and they are able to write it down. So that's easier to do. It's authentic because you can see that their knowledge is on the paper. But in terms of behavior, in terms of communication, in terms of teamwork, in terms of ethics and ethical conduct, what else? Sustainability. So those are things that are less easy to measure in a particular university setting. So we have this term alternative assessment where when we have online teaching and learning where you don't get the chance to do pen and paper assessment anymore, you are able to practice authentic assessment even better. That is why when we have the PLO in group work, for example, ability to work in teams and teamwork, things like that, the best person to actually assess them is their teammates themselves, not you. You may be able to assess the outcome of the team product and you assume it's a team product. It's 5 of them. You never know who actually write. They may assign and they may say, okay, student number 1, you do this, student number 2, you do this. So it's not teamwork, it's delegation. But it's teamwork and delegation, there's a fine line there. They may not be able to be working in teams. Really, they are just delegating and then they compile. Is that the right teamwork? But we don't know for sure. It's not authentic enough. So there are rooms for us to. Thank you, Dr. Hamid. Ethics PLO number 8. Thank you. Those are the things that you have room or we have the chance now to practice even better in terms of alternative assessment. Okay, so let's look at traditional versus alternative assessment. Traditional assessment, those are the lists. One-shot test, indirect test, inauthentic test, individual project, no feedback provided to learners, and all the other things. And then alternative assessment, continuous longitudinal assessment. It's longer time. When we talk about ethics, if you want to address PLO 8 ethics, you don't just look at that question, that one shot question that they answer. So direct test, authentic assessment, group projects, feedback provided to learners. So there's feedback going on. Okay, so untimed, there's no time. Contextualized test task, criteria, reference, score. So you can go to the source directly to know more about this. It will take a long time if we are to go through every single of them, but just to open up your mind that because we are doing online teaching and learning, we don't have to do every time the pen and paper, the conventional way of doing things. This is our chance to practice even better the alternative assessment. Group projects you can give, and then you get the students to rate their team members themselves. You can look at the outcome of the project, so that's teamwork. real time or real scenario. You can give real scenario. So you have a problem to be solved with a team. For example, to apply talk and moment principles when solving a question. So you pose the question to them, and they go to their backyard and they find a crane or a cartwheel, and they are able to express in their own view, okay, I see this cartwheel and I know this is the radius, this is the moment arm, those kind of thing. So it's more authentic, and they will really surprise you with how authentic their thinking is, and you know that they understand moment and thought principles when they do this kind of assessment. It's not just you giving a two-dimensional paper, black and white, one circle, and the textbook kind of thing. And when they talk about moment and talk, they remember a circle with lines, and then they solve the question in certain ways. Very textbooky, but then out there, when they see a crane, they cannot see the thought and the moment, so it's not authentic. They may get 100 marks based on latih to be. They keep trying answering the question using the technique that they learn, and they could score. But when they are in real life, they are not able to understand and apply like how they should. So this is the time when we could give them alternative assessment for them to look at their own surroundings, because they are in their homes, and you are like putting your probe in the whole of Malaysia or even internationally, of what are the life experiences that they could get from their own compound. And this is a rich place for you to gather all this information and your students' learning ability. I think it's a really nice chance for us all to make use of this. Okay, so dimensions of alternative assessment. In this guidebook as well, the one that I mentioned that you can get from our edX website is in PDF. We have identified, based on all these methods of alternative assessment, there are 5 dimensions. Self-assessment, meaning mostly in terms of logbook or reflective writing. Okay, let's say for example, my friend is teaching anatomy and she will put in the students' logbook understanding of, okay, I understand this. When I eat, what are the muscles I use? When I climb up the stairs, those are judgment of self-assessment, and it's rich. It's really rich. Peer assessment, okay, where you have the group member to assess one another. Group-based assessment, where usually this comes when you give a group project where you have percentages of group outcomes and percentage of individual outcomes from that group. So you have the both consideration of the individual contribution as well as the bigger group contribution as a whole. Portfolio-based assessment, performance-based assessment. Performance-based assessment is like when you're driving a car, you go to the on-the-road test. That's performance-based assessment. So you can apply to workshop-based projects or pitching. For example, communication, for your communication, if you have a communication PLO or CLO, you actually make them pitch and industry actually give marks, and so they are actually doing the thing that they're supposed to do, not on paper. Okay, how to present, stand in front, wear nicely, have a good script, you write it down. It's not authentic assessment. So these are things that you can do in terms of authentic assessment or alternative assessment. Is that Prof. Debra Sim Simoy? What about 360-degree assessment? Maybe you want to explain a little bit more about 360-degree assessment? Cikgu John, thank you. Tradition and alternative are supplementary. That's correct. In today's 21st century education, what is the weightage ratio in terms of online or classroom application? Weightage ratio in terms of online and classroom application. How do you achieve equilibrium between these two? You mean the equilibrium between your online and your classroom? Because this semester you don't have classroom. All your teachings are online. So it's very contextualized, I think, to the condition, to the keadaan semasa, Dr. Cikgu Jun. Okay, Dr. Eliza Hafiz, Dr. Azah, can we have the link to the source for traditional versus alternative assessment? Okay, I will post it at the end of it. I'll copy and paste it on the chat area. Okay, Dr. Eliza? Okay. My assumption of the Prof. Debra's 360-degree assessment is where you have different people providing different angles or aspect of assessment. Yes, you could do that. As a lecturer, actually, you can do anything you feel is most appropriate for your students' learning. That's the freedom, that's the ticket that you have, actually. So if you want to provide them assessment from their industry representative and their friends, and you yourself as a lecturer, by all means you can do all the other types of assessment. It's your course, you know how best to assess it. Okay, so self-assessment is a form of formative assessment that engages students' own ability to reflect on the learning process, judge their progress, and take actions on the feedback. Okay, so it encourages students to assess their own learning, evaluate their own work, monitor their own progress, regulate their own learning activities and tasks, and seek their peer and instructors' feedback. So this is self-assessment. So when they write this down, and then at the end of it, you look at it. Sometimes I think logbook is also one way of self-assessment. Peer assessment is when students provide feedback to other students' work, usually in teamwork or in a big, larger classroom. Okay, this encourages students to highlight positive aspects of their peers' learning. Sometimes when you, as a lecturer, give them assignment, you are the outsider looking in, but they are the ones looking in among each other, towards each other, between each other. So the best assessment that the student can get is actually from their friends themselves. I think what you mentioned about that night, that WhatsApp chat, that the link that you gave is my most eye-opening topic. My most eye-opening knowledge about the topic. So they are giving feedback about their own friends learning and sharing. So note areas for improvement in their peers' work. So it's because they are the same level, they are able to talk about this. Oh, thank you, Dr. Safia. Dr. Safia has already shared the link from the request of Dr. Eliza Hafiz here. Thank you so much. Provide constructive comments on how their peers may improve their work. So this is more grounded and more genuine feedback that the peers and their friends are getting. Okay. Some of us may only do peer assessment in terms of a summative one. You mean at the end of the semester, give marks to your own friends, your group members, how well they perform as a group member, and it's a 3 or a 5 or a 4 or 1 or a 0. So it's quite summative in nature, it doesn't help, but you can encourage them to provide this more longitudinal and more continuous feedback about the positive aspect, areas of improvement, and provide constructive comments. Okay. Let's look at performance-based assessment. It's a form of assessment that is based clearly on defined tasks that students need to complete or perform. It can be process or product oriented. It encourages students to apply knowledge and skills in the real world context. And in here, you can be creative, you can simulate soft skills upon task execution, like I mentioned, a presentation and an actual pitching, or an actual proposal of idea to a home care center, or things like that. So it's actually performance based. If you're a dietitian, my sister is a dietitian lecturer. The actual food that they cook my sister, a dietitian, she will bring my daughters and her daughter and the friend's daughter during the cooking assessment of child nutrition recipe. So the students will be cooking for the children, and they will make nice food, and then the lecturer will assess in terms of the nutrition bit and the presentation, and the children themselves will assess in terms of the taste, in terms of the, so that's performance based assessment, in terms of the taste, in terms of the menyelerakan ke tidak, would they buy it, would they bring it to school and things like this. So there are many ways to do this performance based assessment. You simulate an actual condition where you want the students to perform in whatever line of field that your students are in. So it can be a process or product based or oriented. Okay. Next one is the group-based assessment. It's a form of assessment that assesses the work of a learning group in completing a task. So I'm one of the book chapter author of this topic, group-based assessment, and you could read it up. There are many examples in the book as well. Useful to assess teamwork and or collaborative skills. So it's not just the outcome of the group work. It's also the teamwork element or the collaborative skills among the group members. So the level of involvement, quality of contribution, negotiation skills, ability to influence others and things like that. Okay. I think this is the last one, portfolio-based assessment, a collection of purposeful, cumulative and progressive learners' work, digital or non-digital, over a period of time. At one time, even at the kementerian level, we have this my portfolio, and it's very useful for students to, whatever assessment you have given them, not just from the class but also from other classes as well, they gather it and they could put it all in a portfolio, and then when they want to apply for a job or they go for a job interview, they will bring this portfolio. So we can use this portfolio-based assessment as well in our classes, because then you can use your online platform Spectrum for individual students to do the portfolio, and then you can just look from there on your own time and give grades. So it's all these alternative assessment methods is not very heavy on us, because sometimes on certain parts you can make the students self-evaluate themselves. There's peer assessment, so there are more input to the assessment. So it is your job as the the cikgu sekolah, marking tu is less. So I think I would really recommend you to try this out, all this. If you don't want to try everything, you pick one that you think is most relevant to your course and try it out for this semester. Just one. I tried with only one at a time. I don't do all, it's quite overwhelming when you're doing it the first time. But once you get the hang of it, it will be quite natural for you to implement in your other classes and your other courses. Okay? So, yes, this is where you put in one of the forms. I think this is borang, I can't remember, borang 7 ke, where you put in your continuous assessment and your final examination. So your final examination 40% and continuous assessment 60%. This one you cannot change. You cannot change your final exam to make it 60%. That one you have to go through Senate. But what you can change is the component. Let's say final exam 40%. Last time we do it everything during examination week, the 3-hour exam or 2-hour exam kan. But now you can put components of it. So case study report, submit by this is maybe week 14 or week 13, 20%. And then the take home exam, this is more synchronous in nature, 10 a.m. until 1 p.m, 20%. So you can do it this way, final exam. So you don't have to have, all 40% at one time. So you can make it. So this is the part where in the guideline we say you can do it week 13 onwards. Penilaian berterusan or continuous assessment, everything has to end by week 13. In-class test, online quiz, how much percentage assignment, video presentation, so the weightage are there. Okay, so the online assessment, you have the formative continuous assessment, summative, and alternative assessment. So I hope I have addressed the difference between them. Just a quick note on the formative assessment, weightage for each continuous assessment and final exam must follow the approved weightage from Senate. This one you cannot change, as I mentioned before. If it's 40% final, you have to keep it at 40% final. Okay, you cannot change, but you can change what comprises that 40%. Okay, but the summative, the final assessment, at any time at the end of the semester, the final assessment, final summative assessment, this final exam lah. Last time we call it final exam, but this is the 40% bit. Any time at the end of the semester, so you want to give them case study, like the end product of case study or the end take home exam. So that's any time at the end of the semester. Alternative assessment is when you replacement of the final examination with alternative assessment requires the approval of the vetting committee. This is at the faculty level and must be constructively aligned to the CLO. Remember, CLO, the beginning part, where you have the triangle, the constructive alignment, constructive must be still keep to the CLO that the course intended to achieve. So the student has to be able to perform the. So you remember that, and when even if you change your final examination into alternative assessment, it still has of to achieve to be able to apply the theory into application. So you still have to do that. Only the method is different. Okay. So still again, you can click on the teaching and learning guideline, and it's also available on our ADEC website. We have many guidelines. So this purple one is the one that I showed just now. The online teaching and learning guideline up here is also the one that we have the in English version and Bahasa Melayu version, and all the other guideline already. So remember, this is a guideline, it's not a compulsory thing. If you still want to stick with your traditional method during this online teaching and learning on COVID-19 pandemic, by all means, please do. You may find it more difficult though because students are not in front of you. So we are having this webinar in order for you to help you how to do it differently. We also have different videos and infographics from the ADEC website. You just search hashtag #UMTeach online and you'll find all these options. Okay, so again, before we leave, I would really appreciate your feedback about today's session. Please tell us also if you need more information on anything else, so we could contact you personally if required in order for us to address any specific concerns that you have. Okay, so the Google Forms here, you can click it, and I will need Umu or someone to post it on the Google on the chat section of the Microsoft Teams window. Okay. So okay, so we've reached the end of the session. We have Q&A now, but we've also addressed some of the. Oh, thank you, Dr. Hamid. Orang 6. We have Dr. Eliza asking Dr. Sim, how can you share how you do your peer assessment? So I'm seeing a lot of peer discussion going on. That's really great. Okay, Prof. Deborah is doing peer assessment for PBL, done anonymously. So would you, Dr. Sim, Prof. Deborah, would you like to answer Dr. Eliza's question online with us, with everyone listening? Prof. Deborah, you there? So I'll stop sharing now, so we could see each other again. Okay. Prof. Deborah, are you there? Because Dr. Eliza asked if you could share how you do your peer assessment. It's okay. Any other questions? You can switch on your microphone and I will mute mine.
Oh, my microphone is not working.
Prof. Deborah, we can hear you
Yes.
just now. We can hear you just
Oh,
now.
okay. Yeah. Okay. Fine. It's PBL is a small group, so we have eight in a group. So they meet together almost weekly, and then at a selected time, they don't give peer assessment at the end of every week, but after a certain number of sessions together, they will be invited to give their feedback or electronically, anonymously, in terms of the person who's giving it. But they will be given 4 or 5 of their own peers by name that they will actually then give assessments. But those assessments are mostly on learning processes, about their behavior, the way they discuss, whether they show respect, whether they are punctual, whether they contribute to the learning of their other friends, things like that. Not so much on the content itself. And then at the end, they also have a descriptive part where they can actually describe what they appreciate about their peers, or what they think their peers should improve on. And then this will be then sent to their peers. But the peers receiving the feedback wouldn't know which of the students, which of the group has actually given them that assessment. So it's more formative, and they find it helpful. And we actually find this is a motivation for them to then participate actively, because they know that somebody else is watching them, somebody else appreciates what they've done, and which particular area they have done well, or what area they need to improve. But that's the peer assessment part. But for PBL, at the end of every PBL session, they will also have verbal evaluations among themselves. That one is done openly, so they would know who is saying what. Yeah. Okay. Is that fine?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Dr. Lee, very much. I think your mic is muted, Dr. Azah. I can't hear you.
Unmute.
Dr. Nur Azah, you are mute.
Oh, sorry. Dr. Mazlan ke? Any question from Dr. Mazlan ke? Okay.
No.
All right. So I think we've reached the end of the session. I have requested Umu to post the feedback online form. Okay, there it is. Okay, you can go to look at your chat section, ya Allah, and fill it up there, feedback form. Dr. Hamid had one question. If one of our PLOs is PLO 10, teamwork, can we use meeting minutes and randomly ask group members to write it for each individual sessions, such that he or she assesses the group mates and you can use any way you like, Dr. Hamid. Just make it clear to them what is expected for them to do. Whether or not you check randomly, it's up to you. And whether you address the teamwork component is also so. What I know, maybe your department or your faculty may have common rubrics to be used for certain soft skills assessment. So you may want to check with your course coordinator. Sometimes, or some faculty or some department, they may have, for teamwork, they have a certain rubric. So you may want to find that out first also. And on top of that, you can also do the other assessment that you plan to do. The meeting and minutes is also a good idea, a great idea to try out. Okay. Let me see if I have missed any other questions. Okay, I think we have addressed all of it. Thank you so much, everyone. I will end this session. Thank you, Dr. Amira, Dr. Felicita, Dr. Mazlan, Dr. Nur Izian, Dr. Adiani, Dr. Rosie Pamela, Dr. Prof. Debra, Dr. Eliza, Dr. Sharifah Noor, and those who I can't see their names. Thank you so much for attending today's session, and I hope this webinar helps you perform your teaching online and learning with more confidence and more comfort, knowing that you are not on the same, you are not alone in this. We are all in the same boat. We are all trying this out together for the second time. Last semester was even harder. Now that we have a little bit more time to prepare. So all the best for everyone, and I'll see you next time during our other webinars. Thank you so much. Goodbye.